and Planning. Tonight is the RFP review of waste management, and I've got a couple of little items of business to do before we jump into their presentation. Number one is homework assignments. We have some overdue. You probably know who you are. I'm not going to name names, but we're missing 3 score sheets from Design This, 2 from Merrow Oaks, 3 from Republic, 3 from Rockwood, 2 from Straightway, 3 from Waste Away, and 2 from Waste Alliance. If you have not turned those in, please do so. If you don't, we'll just use a weighted average, but we would really appreciate the fact that you turn those in because we need those to be a full team. All right? Tonight is waste management. Tomorrow night is Pratt Recycling, and that completes our RFP list. And then we will decide on where we go from there. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the folks from Waste Management to come up and give their presentation. So if you all would come up, or whoever is the spokesperson or team. And just a reminder that this is a recorded presentation, so you're not only talking to us, but the millions of folks that are listening in the county and abroad. So be sure and state your name fully and clearly into the microphone so the listening public can hear as well, okay? And don't feel, I know it's kind of strange, but don't feel like you have to face us to talk. It's important that you look in or face the microphone and let the cameras pick you up. So, all right, take it away.
Okay, great. I'm going to introduce the 3 of us. Dawn's going to kick off with just a couple of slides, tell you a little bit about who we are locally. My name is Rob Owen. I manage all the government contracting work in about a 3-state area. I live in Knoxville. I actually started my career here 30 years ago. Neil Schaefer was giving a presentation. The courtroom wasn't this nice, as best I remember.
You're right, Rob.
It was on a Saturday, so I remember that. But yeah, I'm glad to be back. I bought my first house here with my wife, so this has been home, although I do live in Knoxville now. I'm going to introduce Dawn here in a second. She's going to kind of go through the slides. Dwight lives here locally. We just kind of wanted to give you a flavor of who we are, but I'm going to roll it over to Dawn.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dawn Cole. I'm the public sector representative for the state of Tennessee with Waste Management. And, you know, Waste Management is a nationwide company. We are the largest environmental solutions company in North America. We're also the largest recycler in North America. We have about 45,000 employees nationwide. But we do have an area market office located in Franklin, so that gives us the local touch that Rob was mentioning. And Becky, if we can go to the next slide. This is our leadership team in our Franklin office. At the top, you'll see Eddie McManus. He's our area vice president. He's been with us about 3 years now. He's been with the company for about a dozen or so years. He was in Florida and Boston before he came to be our area vice president. Dwight, as we mentioned, is our area sales director. Charlie Gilliland, who lives in Spring Hill, he is our director of disposal operations. Rob, that you already met. Don Gentlecore also lives in Franklin. He is our senior landfill manager, and then there's myself as well too. So like I said, our area of market office is in Franklin, so we're just right down the road. These are the people that would be involved in any decisions, any programs or anything that we do here in Rutherford County. So, you know, we're not that far away. We can be here and be easily accessible for you at any time. So I'm going to let Dwight introduce himself and tell you a little bit about himself.
I'm not sure how much you want to know about me, but no, I'm a Murfreesboro resident. I've been here for 10 years. I actually went to college at Middle Tennessee State a long time ago, probably before Rob had that meeting on Saturday. But you know, have love Murfreesboro. You know, me and my family moved here 10 years ago, like I said, and this is where we'll be. We're not leaving Murfreesboro. My daughter went to high school here. She's now at MTSU as well. So great community. You know, we care a lot about the community, and that's kind of the reason Rob and I spoke. And and just kind of want to be a part of this process, let you know that it means something to me as well, because I live here and I've got to deal with the same thing you've got to deal with on a daily basis. So myself personally, I've been in this business for 25, 26 years, started out in the Carolinas back in the mid-90s, but I've been with Waste now 11 years, ran the state of Tennessee on the hauling side for 7 or 8 and went to sales a couple years ago. But that's a little bit about me, but like I said, I'm a part of the community. I'm a neighbor of your guys and very interested in what we do here and what happens in this city and this county. So, thank you.
Thanks. I promise you, I've been aggressively trying to gain weight since that picture. So, we're gonna. Could you jump to the next slide? Just to kind of share a little bit about what we've got just in the Middle Tennessee area. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail, but one of the things when you look through our proposal, we've got assets in place that potentially give you an opportunity to kind of crawl before you walk and walk before you run, if that makes sense. We've got just top to bottom here, Waste Management Nashville North is kind of a hybrid transfer station / processing facility. It's up by Rivergate Mall. As we move down, we've got River Hills Recycling. That's a full-blown MRF. Nashville uses it for their single stream program. It's a pretty large facility. It's part of our proposal. Southern Services C&D landfill. Not sure that makes sense in an application for y'all, given the distance and where it is. Antioch Transfer Station is our facility based at our hauling location. Would love to have anybody, I don't know how many have seen a transfer station. If you'd like to come see, we'd love to have you. We'll be glad Dawn can set it up. Our market area office, and again, we're the management team that are going to make decisions and hopefully have a relationship with the county are going to be here. Obviously, Dwight lives here. Our area VP is in Franklin, so we've got a concentration of folks that are committed to the Middle Tennessee area, and we wanted to kind of highlight that. 2 landfills, West Camden's right across the river as you're on I-40 going to Memphis. Cedar Ridge is located just outside of Lewisburg. So we've got 2 disposal facilities that are potential service for the county, if that makes sense and is something that you're interested in. Again, the offer's there. If any of these facilities you want to look at, if there's anything outside of that realm, we've got that opportunity. We've got, I guess one of the good things about being the largest is we've made a lot of mistakes, and frankly, that's what we hope our customers will benefit from. But we've got a lot of experience. We've got a lot of access to different processes, different types of facilities. And as we go through that, as y'all go through the process, if there are things you want to go see, study, investigate, we'd be glad to arrange that if it's appropriate and if you're interested. So, Becky, can you jump to the next slide? I'm going to kind of throw it open. We responded to each of these areas. I'll be glad to go into any level of detail or sharing in terms of what you want or are interested in. I don't want to go through and bore you with each individual module, but you know, pretty much we responded to everything but the landfill mining piece. We're just really not in a position where we could pursue that. Not sure it makes sense for us, not being critical of the process, just not something that makes sense for Waste Management at this point. So with that, I guess the other thing to stress is we've done 2 responses. I know y'all are in a pretty intense process, and we can play a role in whether you want us to be a vendor and just come pick up containers, or you want to partner, or anything in between. So we're interested. I guess I'd like to throw it open, Chairman, and any questions about any of the specific things that we've offered, we'd be glad to do our best to respond. The
educational facility at Riverview.
Yeah, it's actually part of our contract with Metro. There's an employee there that works, and there's a series of different outreaches. There are schools that tour. There are people that come in, they look at the facility. It's a dedicated room and a dedicated employee that we facilitate. Excuse me. There's a lot of programs that we create internally. The primary one is Recycle Right, and you can access it on Google, but there's a complete suite of training opportunities depending upon whether it's an educational perspective, business, commercial, industrial, all those things. And it's there, it's part of what we offer, and depending upon what you choose, if it's appropriate, that's part of what we do as a company.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Just
I
jump in,
came
Wayne.
here to be board tonight, so I would like every detail that you're willing to share with us. So if you want to work through each module, I want to be educated about what your abilities are.
Okay. Public education and community outreach, our primary tool for that is Recycle Off and Recycle Right. That's a proprietary program that we've developed. It gives you the opportunity to go in and build programs out based upon whatever setting that we're in, whether that's, again, at a school, at a business, at a multifamily unit. It can be applied across just about any different business in any setting. Depending upon what you choose or what you're interested in, we would apply that in that given situation. It might not be appropriate for every module, but so there's no cost associated with it. That would just be tied to whatever program you selected. Residential collection, what we chose to respond to was essentially door-to-door in the unincorporated area. It's a balancing act because currently you've got people that are out servicing that. You've got entrepreneurs that are out, and we certainly don't want to suggest displacing those folks. But if you want the best value and the best price, and regardless of who the proposer is, we would encourage you to consider giving a contractor the entire unincorporated area. We would encourage you to look at a specific level of service, which is carts, 96-gallon carts. We prefer and invest in ASLs, which are one-armed bandits. It allows us to have the least amount of labor associated with it and the lowest cost. And that's pretty industry-wide. One of the things I think we're all experiencing is labor, and finding people to hang off the back of trucks is continuing to be a challenge. So we're moving to an ASL format. That's what I would encourage the county to consider. I don't know specifically, again, I know there are people out there providing it. I would suggest that the best value for the county and the lowest price would be to grant that to one customer. You can either bill them or we can. If you take over the billing risk, then it obviously lowers our costs once again, right? That would be our suggestion. Now, with that in place, y'all got a lot of convenience centers and you're spending a lot of money. I'm not suggesting that's a bad idea. I would think that you could offset that with a countywide collection piece. It's interesting in that I work across 3 or 4 states. When we go to Alabama, virtually, there's a lot more counties with countywide collection than not. versus when you come here, you see more of a convenience center format. Go to West Tennessee, you get a little more of a mix, but so it's different depending upon where you are. I would think if you did a countywide service, you could pare back the amount of convenience centers that you ran and offered. But that would be our suggestion, would be to look at where there's a guaranteed number. Again, at any point where there's risk, everybody's cost is going to go up in terms of what they charge. So that would be our suggestion from residential collection. Processing.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
You said if we provided some infrastructure, there would be a lower cost. What are we talking about, a transfer station, or what did you mean by that?
Well, it would depend upon what module that we're talking about, right? If you came in and said, okay, contractor, we want you to provide a price to pick up every house in the unincorporated area. We would give you a price for that, and then our price would be lower because we would, in turn, you would guarantee the bill. You could give us the right to collect without having, I say us, any contractor. And it would be a different price, right? Because we're going to have to go collect from each individual customer, or any contractor would. So the greater risk, the higher the rate, right? Now, in terms of whether it's processing or transportation or disposal, our pricing would get better, for lack of a better term, based upon, would you provide us land to site the facility? Would you help, how many tons are you going to guarantee us that you're going to bring in, right? Because I know right now, I think y'all have about 45,000 tons. I think the city's got approximately the same, and we control about that in trucks that we pick up, right? So that's a pretty good start. It's about, what would you agree? It's about 50% of what's there. So, those types of guarantees, how long a contract that you'd be prepared to sign, right, lets us spread our cost out over time. But again, it's a partnership or vendor, and I hate to keep going back to that, but if we're a vendor, our price is probably going to be a little higher. If we're a partner, we're in it together. Obviously there's buy-sell agreements. You could buy the building out in a transfer station case. But does that answer your question?
It does, and I think in all respect, you can't give us specifics until we give you an agreement or we sit down and work that out. But one question else, and I think you did a good job explaining that. I live in the rural area, and I'm actually about 900 feet from the road, and I got a gravel drive, and I don't really like hauling a cart. The idea of pulling a 96-gallon cart up and down that driveway, are you doing pickups from the road where you can just scoop and go, or you're going to come up my driveway and pick it up?
Well, I mean, we can do whatever you want. It just comes down to kind of a function of what you're willing to pay for, right? So I guess to get in a price point that's attractive, I understand your position, right? We typically have in these contracts, we have senior citizen discounts or senior citizen set aside where there's backdoor service for some, but obviously, and what's a typical percentage? I mean, in terms of backdoor on these big.
10% is single digit.
Yeah, but again, to service backdoor, that's a whole different price point, a whole different, right? I mean, because it's based upon how many houses can we pick up in an hour, right? We're going to try to run our people between 50 and 55 hours a week, and the question becomes, and that ASL gives us that opportunity. What we've seen is from a safety perspective, the ASL is a much better option. We run a lot of rear loaders, and we have some pretty horrific accidents, and so it's pretty compelling when you see and read these stories. I mean, it's bad. So Safety's part of it. Finding the people.
I assume you're talking about automatic loading system? Is
Yeah.
that, okay.
Yeah. Well, again, it's versus a rear loader, right, where we've got people behind the truck. And so it's, from a safety perspective, and probably what's become more obvious in the last 3 to 4 months is just labor. It's finding people. It's a difficult labor market, right? And that's not, slinging trash is not always one of the first things on folks' radar in what they're interested in. Was that?
You keep mentioning unincorporated areas. We have 3 other municipalities that do not have solid waste departments.
Yes, sir.
Verne, Smyrna, and Eagleville. Murfreesboro, of course, does. So it's not just unincorporated that we're concerned about. We're also concerned about the other municipalities that do not have a solid waste program.
Well, and we would be glad to provide pricing for that. It's just a function of and again, I know enough because I've lived here. I know there are private haulers that operate in that area and they provide service, right? So if that's part of what you want us to price, then we'll be glad to do that. We just need guidance and direction, quantity, what's the format going to be, how many houses. Frankly, a city is going to have a lower cost structure for us than the unincorporated areas, right? So, but again, I don't know who you speak for relative to if those cities are part of it. We would love to give a price, as I'm sure every other proposer would, to know that it's there. But yes, we would do that, right? Then the question becomes, how do we blend that pricing together? What does that look like? And that would just be a function of going through how you set your bid up and what kind of responses you're looking for.
Let me help just a little.
Sure.
What Wayne's asking about is in the city, you're going to be picking up every cart at every home. You got an automated side loader that's going to stop, pick that up, dump it, move forward, and just keep on going. In Robert's situation, you're going to have a pickup truck running up that 900-foot long driveway, dumping the cart over in the back of that truck, and then go to a rear loader somewhere else to empty in. You've touched it twice already. So the more often you touch it, the more it's going to cost.
Yes. And that is the quandary we find ourselves in because everybody wants backdoor service at curbside pricing, right? So, yes, sir.
Rob, yeah, Mayor has a question.
Mr. Owen, so you probably heard that we don't want metros or other counties bringing trash into Rutherford County, and so because we have private haulers in the north end of the county and those municipalities, and the city mayor here in Murfreesboro, they have their own sanitation department. What kind of waste stream would you have to generate? Would we need to bring all those cities together combined with the county to generate enough waste stream to offset what is coming in from Metro in order for you to enter into a partnership to build a state-of-the-art composting facility or a state-of-the-art recycling facility? Or is Rutherford County, do we produce enough waste stream to even get to the table to talk about that?
Well, it depends, Mayor. When we look at the total material out there, the first thing we've got to talk about is separating that material out.
Right.
Okay? So to sit and say, if we talk about processing as an example, when you read our proposal, what we talk about is that crawl before you walk and walk before you run. The very first thing before we say we're going to build a composting facility or we understand the MRF side of the business, right? And I think there's some things we could do over a 2 to 5 year period where we could put the collection programs in place We believe as a company that we need to get to the closest point of generation of material and to keep it separated and clean. So, because at the end of the day, when we run a MRF, we're making a product. Now, granted, it may be a bale, but that's kind of our philosophy. There are, and I don't want to call them black box solutions, but there are processes out there where they take everything they pick up, take it in a building, and process it and sort it and try to fractionalize it. And it's frankly has had limited success. You know, the closest one to y'all is in Montgomery. It's called a dirty MRF. It's called a lot of different things. But
Montgomery, Alabama, or Montgomery County?
No, Montgomery, Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's about a $40 million facility. They bring in primarily rear load waste from the city of Montgomery. They bring it all in, and then they process it. And we have done that in different places, and frankly, the technology is not there from our perspective today. We're in Chicago and a couple other places. We're building kind of the MRF of the future with robotics and a lot of technology. But again, everything we do is going to start from the collection perspective. Okay, we're going to try to get as close to that customer, whether that's a household with a single stream program, whether that's a business or a multifamily unit. Right, there's certain things we want to do, and we want to keep the bad stuff away from the fiber. Right, sure. Our programs are real simple. It's paper, it's plastic. So, long story to answer your question. I don't know if there's enough material there to run the facilities. You know, the composting facilities, the closest one I think y'all visited is up in Sevierville, is the Bedminster facility. Lots of organics, lots of sewage sludge, which is kind of what drove their investment. The marketability of their product out the back end is a matter of perspective and question in terms of what is it and where does it go. And I'm not going to debate that. It's beauty's in the eye of the composter, for lack of a better term. You know, the things that we focus on and have had success are anaerobic digestion, where we go and we try to fractionalize out the organic piece of the waste stream. We take that, we emulsify it, and we take it into a wastewater treatment plant. And they use that material to increase their generation of methane. Most of those facilities their energy is satisfied through the generation of gas, right? So we've done that 2 or 3 places on the West Coast. We've got one up in the Northeast. But again, we're going to go to specific types of customers. And I would love to say there's enough residentially. It gets a little dicey, right? Because then all of a sudden we're coming by 3 and 4 times to pick somebody's, up. If we were going to start an organic program here, the first thought would be, let's go to the government entity control. Let's go to the schools. Let's go to MTSU. Let's go see what kind of materials there. The other thing that we need for organic processing is we need the wastewater treatment plant. We need to understand how they're organized, how they run. And in some places, it creates a lot of value because it generates gas and it offsets their energy consumption. Some cases, maybe not. So, long story short, there are things that we do. We again, are a little different. I know y'all have had some presentations. I don't want to be critical of anybody's process. We've probably invested in, 24 companies over the last 10 years, hundreds of millions of dollars. Some of them, we're still partners in. Fulcrum, I know you're familiar with that. It's $500 million to build one.
And still not the first gallon's been produced, right? And y'all invested heavily.
Yeah, and we're their partner in Nevada. They've got another partner in Chicago. We've got other. If their process works, they will pick and choose where they want to go because they will be the Kingslayer, for lack of a better. And you'll see them go to L.A., San Francisco, New York, Philadelphia. But again, we're a big company, y'all. But I mean, $250 million for a facility is just massive. You know, so you start talking about building 10 of those, I mean, it's billions of dollars all of a sudden. So,
I have one other question. This letter here was dated February 24th, and it was just about 10 days after we got the RFP dated February 15th. Second page, it says landfill mining reclamation, no proposal. Up here it says proposed functions, landfill mining reclamation. Which, are you proposing that you will consider that or no?
It was just from an organizational perspective to speak to your 6 modules.
But you have no interest in our current kept landfill owned by the county of reclaiming that facility, removing the cap and mining out our old landfill that we closed back in the 90s.
Yeah, well, the short answer is no.
Okay.
And a lot of that's just tied to the liability. My previous life gives me insight into that, but you know, we're just not in a position to, I mean, you've got to be in a position to manage materials coming out of that process, so we're just not in.
You know what's buried in there then?
I don't.
Okay, so.
Nothing that I'm aware of is buried in there, but I don't know what's there. How about that for a good answer on tape?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So, again, and I don't mean to jump back and forth, but one of the things the mayor brought up that I think is critical is, again, the crawl before you walk, walk before you run. In order to get into a MRF or a situation like that, I think the waste stream's here, but I think we've got to develop the collection piece of it first. How much OCC do you run here?
We probably run 2 full routes here on a daily basis from in the commercial accounts. And then, of course, we've got industrial plants that we do a lot of OCC with. But yeah, I mean, you know, tons on a daily basis, you're probably talking 75, 80 tons a day, I'd guess.
You know, obviously, I don't know what type of systems the school, who does schools here? Do y'all pick them up or are they contracted out?
Mac.
And then who picks up, does Pratt pick up the OCC? Okay. So as an example, you've already got that process in place. Those are the kind of things that I'd try to build a plan off of, is what you've got out there. Try to understand the quantities and the materials. What does MTSU look like? Of course, I'm sure their numbers are very different today than they were a year ago. Hopefully everything changes and we're
August, we hope they're back to up and running again.
Amen. So that would be, is to focus on the things we know we have a market for, which is paper, cardboard, plastics, aluminum. If we discover and see a need and a desire in the materials there, I would caution you and caution anybody. If somebody comes in and offers you a solution where you essentially don't, all you do is throw everything away and walk away from it, your chances of being successful are, I mean, at some point someone will come up with a technology. Trust me, if we found it or saw it, I mean, that's why we've invested a lot of things. We just have not found that process yet.
But you think we have to change the culture?
Absolutely.
Through recycling and education, and I mean, much like Europe has done. Europe realizes you just don't go down the road and start throwing your trash out like it's so easy here. We need to increase the fines. You know, we're in the process of doing that for littering. We need to educate our public.
Well, yeah, and I think...
And you could help us do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you got to build a plan out, right, and say what makes sense. I mean, you know, our tenets and what we believe in are pretty I'm trying to be as direct as I can. We're not, we would love a black box solution, but right now it's not there, right? So our desire, again, is to get as close to the customer, is to keep the material as separated as we can and through that process. And to your point, it's a ton of education, and it's a completely different mindset.
One last question, Mr. Chairman. At your two sites at Cedar Ridge and Camden, what's your limited projected airspace time on both those locations? How many years you got left at each location?
Approximately 10 or a little more at Cedar. There's a potential for an expansion there, greater than 20 at Camden with a potential for expansion. And you're going to hear that from
everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that's what look, I mean, Dwight does an exceptional job. We're leading the country in sales, which congratulations to Dwight. We've got an obligation, right? Every day, our trucks are going to, well, some of them are rolling right now. I mean, inherently, that is our business, so we're always looking for options and opportunities. Yeah. We have to.
Well, former Mayor Joe Boyd Liggett, down in Lewisburg, his farm's right across the hill from, so he's right across the hill from me, so he keeps me informed what y'all doing down there.
He keeps us informed too.
He told me that.
He's got my phone. I went to school at MTSU. I grew up in Lewisburg, so I've talked to him quite often.
Yes, sir.
Where it all began. Let me jump back. Again, we've got facilities in place that hopefully can bridge the gap. I think eventually there's enough material here to support it, but we've got to create the collection program. Someone has to create the collection programs. Talked about 2 or 3 different things. The organic process that we've done, again, is going to be driven, the city and the wastewater treatment plant would have to be a huge part of that, right? We start trucking stuff to Nashville, it doesn't make sense. And it's a specialized type of equipment and different things that we would have to do, but we need a wastewater treatment plant to make that or a industry that would use, that would be the other thing that might make some sense, is that potentially we might find an industry that saw the need for that energy and valued it. Okay, that's, and I can't give you one off the top of my head. What I can tell you is one of the things we've done as a company is we've invested in a gas process at a lot of our landfills where we make electricity, and it's really, it's great. I ran Chestnut Ridge in Knoxville, and there's nothing better than ending a landfill tour when you go into a waste of energy and you got all these engines running and you're making electricity, and you can talk about running the city of Clinton off of what you're doing. But now what we've done is we've built one at Outer Loop at our landfill, one we're bringing online or starting to develop this summer in Arkansas. But we actually take the methane gas out of the landfill, we strip it down to pipeline grade, and we sell it into the grid. And then there is a reciprocal agreement where their gas credits or RINs. So it's really, it's very interesting. It has a huge value. A lot of people are interested in that. That might be a place for the organics. There may be an industry out there that would be interested in and look forward or look to that gas, because there are different tax benefits in other parts of the country. I'll just leave it there. But
TVA is so cheap, it's hard to beat. By if we generate electricity, we've talked to Middle Tennessee Electric, and they said it'd be tough to beat what rates they're buying at, even if we generate it from.
It is, but we've got 3 cogen facilities, Chestnut, Camden, and one in Mississippi, that we sell into TVA's program, where they pay a premium. Right, we wheel, like in Knoxville, we wheel through KUB, but we're selling to TVA. So TVA sponsors that program and facilitates it. it gets into a very complicated, it's deferred cost is what they pay, and I'm not smart enough to even begin there. But they've got a special program that we and probably half a dozen others sell into. Transportation, again, disposal-wise, we operate a series of transfer stations. Typically, we have a third-party contractor. In our case, locally, it's a company called MBI. They run tractors and trailers. They load trucks. Pretty simple break bulk facility, right? We take smaller trucks, combine them, put them on a big truck, haul it 60 to 100 miles. So that transportation piece is something we do. We do it every day. We've got a great relationship with MBI there, but very seldom do we buy tractor trailers and run them. That's just something we just use that relationship with them. But something again we do. We've got access to a lot of trucks based upon the business that we have with them, okay? Disposal, we talked about our landfills. Again, pretty straightforward. I'm sure y'all have got information on other disposal pricing across the market. We've got current contracts with Dixon County, Williamson County, Murray County, Bedford County, City of Shelbyville. Who else am I missing? I'm talking about your world, so. Hickman County, right. So, y'all are pretty, I know that can be a sensitive topic relative to your earlier reference to Nashville and all those things, but again, had a long-term relationship with Rasco, which is Sumner County. They're currently going to Smith County, but we work with them. So again, it's pretty simple process. Some transfer stations are bigger and have other options. There are things that we've learned that we would suggest, right, over time. But again, it just gets to a function of what do y'all want and what are you looking for. Hopefully, pricing-wise, you've got kind of a range of where we would think it is. I know Becky's got access to bid numbers. There's no secrets out there, right? You can see what other people are paying. Pretty simple stuff, right? You can look at the business side of it and figure that out. So that's kind of a high level, fast. I hope that kind of provides some information. Again, we don't want to limit or eliminate anything based upon your level of interest. I know y'all, probably a matter of perspective, but y'all have had a great situation through the years, right? And from a financial standpoint, at least. And that makes some of these options probably difficult financially to look at, but we would love the opportunity to serve you or to participate to whatever degree and extent. Again, we're probably going to be a little more cautious and a little more conservative. That's not to be critical of other people and their processes. Again, we probably made more mistakes than anybody, and hopefully have learned through time what does and doesn't make sense, and where risk is worth taking. Go ahead.
Well, hold on. I got Craig first. Chairman.
Steve, you want to take this first?
Okay.
Okay. I have a few questions.
Sure.
I'm sure you understand that the community and Republic is having a pretty good little fight with each other. So my questions are going to be a lot to do with community. So you talk about you have a price for everything. What is your guarantee on the rate? Do we do a 15-year contract, 22? How is that?
Well, typically, I guess, it depends upon the function of what you're looking at and what our level of investment is. You want to talk about disposal?
Yes.
I guess okay.
I want to talk about, whatever you got a price on is what I want to know how long you're going to guarantee it.
Yeah. Well, first off, most contracts are driven on 10-year increments because that's what you've got to go to the state and guarantee them capacity under your solid waste plan, okay? You can do that any shape, form, or fashion. 5 years, 5-year option, 10 one-year options. The longer the guarantee, the better our price. Typically what you're going to see is we're going to have an annual cost escalator. We use water, sewer, trash, which averages about 3 to 3.5% per year. We're going to ask for that. Depending upon how much transportation ties into it, we're going to have a fuel provider, right? Our price is going to be based upon a certain cost of fuel, which is clearly spelled out. We have to prove what fuel pass-through is. The longer that contract is, the more important fuel to protect us, the contractor that's hauling it, right? And then the rest of it's pretty standard contract language, right? I mean, it would be something that our attorney would negotiate with your attorney. It would be clearly spelled out, right? If we come in and we got to build double or triple liners, we're going to come back and we're going to ask for more money because our cost structure goes up. In a lot of cases, we have the right to come back and ask. You can decide not to, and you're free of that agreement. But obviously, it's what we call a change of law provision, okay? So if the state of Tennessee changed what the design standards were, that would be a provision. That's pretty standard in most of our disposal agreements. But that's kind of how that's structured and what potential pricing changes would happen over time.
So you would give us a price for 10 years, and you just said a whole lot of factors in there that's really unknown. So we're basically, I'm a numbers guy, so 10% on top of whatever it is a year?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
You're saying that there's going to be 3.5% added, I assume, for, what'd you say?
Year to year.
ACI? Is
Yeah.
it ACI?
Well,
And then you have fuel.
potentially,
So,
based on what fuel's doing.
So if we had a contract like a year ago and then fuel is going up like it is right here, we'd have to go back and renegotiate.
Well, there would be a fuel adjustment, which is pretty standard across the industry. I can get you an example, but I mean, to sit there and say if you were paying that your price would go up 10% in a year I don't think is accurate, but
So what do you think it would be?
I think it's going to be somewhere between 3 to 4% is what you're going to see. Yeah. And primarily that's going to be tied to an annual escalator, right? It's going to be a percentage applied against your rate for whatever service it is.
Okay, where do you propose to put a transfer station? And my second question I'm going to add to that, how do you expect the neighborhoods are going to, how do you think neighborhoods are going to react to that? 'Cause see, I think transfer stations are mini landfills because you're stocking all that stuff and smell. We're having a major problem with smell. That is our number one concern around here with citizens. So how are you going to eliminate that? How are you going to eliminate that?
Well, the first thing I would encourage you, whether it's us or anybody, is to try to put everything under roof, okay? Is to keep it all inside. And that's going to mean you're going to have to probably build a bigger facility than what you need. But that's, I understand, look guys, we run landfills all over the country. I understand odor, I understand what you're dealing with, okay? I ran landfills for a big portion of my career. So I think a transfer station, a couple of things. We would encourage to put everything under a roof where everything is internal to that operation. You know, to sit there and say you're never going to have a piece of equipment break down or you're never going to have weather in between you and the landfill, generally speaking, those transfer stations should be cleaned every night, right? The biggest thing would be to put it all under roof and I hate to say, I would enclose those operations where you didn't have issues of wind, weather, blowing stuff around. You know, again, I can show you 10 different types of transfer stations. But the biggest thing would be to put it inside, keep it covered, and manage your operation. I mean, and again, if that's a big issue for y'all, is to come up with a set of conditions, and that becomes part of the contract. You either perform or don't perform, and there's a bond, and if you don't perform, you get punished, right?
So you wouldn't be against the county having the ability to pass ordinances if you did do something in regard to smell and odor and all that?
No, I mean, obviously,
So if the county holds you accountable, are you okay with that?
as long as you're reasonable in how you're holding me accountable, and I guess that's where, right, that's where it gets a matter of perspective. But yeah, I don't think that's an issue. I mean, understand given where you're coming from and the issues you're dealing with, I appreciate it. You're probably going to have to spend a little more money and build a different type of facility. You asked another question, where? I mean, again, we're approaching you from a partner perspective, right? I can understand and would think some people are going to say, Walter Hill's taking the brunt of this forever. We don't want you going there. Okay. Typically you find them in industrial areas. Typically you're going to find them where there's a lot of truck traffic, right? And so where that is and what it is, that would purely, and frankly, you're going to probably want to look at logistically where the material's coming from and put it in the best place long term, because this isn't going to be a 3 or 4 or 5 year deal, right? It's going to be generational. So that would be the other thing. Is the city of Murfreesboro involved? If it is, probably need to factor that in. I think they control about what y'all control, right? So they're 50-50. But I mean, again, I understand citing. We understand public hearings. I get it. And a lot of that would be where you all guide us and direct us. I mean, I can tell you what my druthers would be, where we would, right? We'd pull up a map and we'd look at centroids of concentration and where the volume's coming from, and that would drive part of our process.
I have 2 more. Mm-hmm. All right. These are together, so what are your plans to support the community? What investment are you going to make into the community? And the second part to that question is, do you feel that on your recycling that the city should have ordinances to help you get to your recycling goals?
I think it's ultimately up to every community to decide what they want to accomplish. We can sit down and share what we think drives the behavior and gets the results, but we're not going to be arrogant enough to sit there and say, this is what you have to do. I mean, if you tell me what end result you want, I can give you kind of a pathway to get there. But I mean, ultimately, I don't want to be the regulatory police. I don't want to be the garbage cop, right? And go say, this is what you have to do. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I'm just saying, do you feel that that's going to be inevitable? Because recycling, like we talked about this, we've been trying to do this for 30 years. And it seems to be one of the biggest obstacles that we have is educating people on how to recycle. So I'm not saying I'm doing anything like that. I'm just saying, is that a step that you would look at, and the county would be something that we'd have to look at for you to reach your cycle goals?
Well, they're not.
Y'all hear me?
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, they're not our goals. They're what you tell us you want to accomplish, right? I mean, I know the big players in the industry, we're, like, if I go to Louisville, we've got a significant landfill there. It's in town, right? So everybody goes, well, all you care about is landfilling. We're pretty agnostic, okay? I mean, we're going to invest in the processes that our customers want and that we can get the appropriate returns on. So with that said, you've got to come back and tell us what you want to accomplish, And then we can show you a pathway or give you examples of places. You know, if we go out to the West Coast, you're going to see a much more aggressive platform in terms of, from a regulatory perspective, about what you can and can't do and will and won't do. Is that the best? That's what our customers are telling us that we want, or what they want. So you asked me another question, and I'm
what's your plans to support the community?
Well, I think that comes down to what your expectations are.
Well, we're just saying that, you know, like one of the biggest things we have with Republica is we want them to be more involved in our community. And that's one thing. We don't just want to be a garbage company. We want to be able to have a relationship. You keep saying partnership, so that's where this question is coming at.
Well, again, I think that feedback comes from y'all and what your expectations are and what you want to see happen, right? I mean, whatever facility you're going to build or that you invest in, I mean, I just think you bake that into the structure of your agreement, of your relationship, of your partnership, right? Whether that's a host fee or whether that's money that the facility donates or generates, or you know, I've seen it 50 different ways. When I left here, I went to work in Memphis, and we bid a contract with the city of Memphis. And one of the things we had was we had certain construction dollars that had to be spent with approved vendors. Okay, that was just something that they expected us to do, and we did it. It wasn't easy, but that was laid out, right? When we got the RFP, this is what our expectations are.
All right, thank you. And I guess the last one that I want to ask you is, just made a tremendous amount of news, is can you explain to us why your permit was turned down by Nashville?
Well, what I can tell you is it's in litigation. The City of Nashville Solid Waste Board developed a solid waste plan that we believe doesn't meet reasonable standards, and we're going to go to court and see. That's about all I can say.
I've got a couple of questions, and trying to sort out, you remind me of one of the other people that I liked here that's presented to us, in the fact that you're open to negotiation and you have a lot of experience. Plus, you know, if you say you could build a MRF and operate it, yes, you can. You say you can build a state-of-the-art transfer station, yes, you can. You've convinced me of all that. What I hadn't convinced myself of is how much of your items we can use. So one of the questions I've got is, can we, if we say found somebody that's willing to mine out our old landfill, which is something most of us think we'd like to have done, and we wanted you to do transfer or composting or something like that, will you be willing to integrate with another company and work with us and partnerships like that, so you don't get everything that you're proposing up here? But
sure. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I would hope one of the values we bring, I mean, look, I'm telling you flat out, we don't run trucks, we don't run transfer trailers and tractors and trailers. We just don't do it. We don't load in the buildings, right? We bring third parties in. And there are people that are better than us at certain things. And that's not just from a tractor trailer perspective. So sure, we would be interested in that. You know, I would hope the other thing is I would hope some of our experience, good and bad, would potentially help you in terms of evaluating different people, right?
And I agree with that. I think you have. Now I'm going to throw out a couple of what ifs. You know we generate around 40 tons. You can say that however you want to say it. In the city of Murfreesboro's, I want to say another 40, 45 tons. If we decided we don't want to fool with trash at all, we want it out of here, you could set up a transfer station just to take our rural and whatever municipality decided to go with us, what would it, just ballpark, what would it cost us per ton? And I realize there's a lot of gotchas on that. But just,
Well, I would encourage you to go look at your pricing sheet and look at the range of tons. And obviously, the smaller the volume, the less time that you're committed to, it's going to push it to the higher end of the spectrum. Okay? And again, that would be for 45,000 tons a year. If we're going to put something inside, right, which I understand, but the earlier conversation about transfer station, that's a little different than, that may cost a little bit more money. Again, over 10 years or longer, may not be that big of an issue.
I'm throwing that out as an example because that's something doable. We decided, hey, we just don't want to mess with trash at all. We want you to haul it out of here. We don't want it going in the ground. You know, that's why.
You don't want it going in the ground here. Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought
we
y'all
hadn't seen
had
that.
gotten them.
And then two, the other scenario would be we're going to, as a group here, decide who we think's a best match for us. And at that time, we're going to talk with our municipalities and our other partners in this county. And they're going to have a voice in this too. And having said that, let's just assume that we've got the county's trash and we've got the city of Murfreesboro's trash and say access to their wastewater treatment plants. What would you say would be our best options with that kind of volume and say the wastewater treatment thrown in there?
Okay, well, when I was talking about the wastewater treatment plant, that would be in a scenario where we pull the organics out, right? And the wastewater treatment plant had a desire and a need for it. That would be another scenario, and I can't even go into a pricing perspective of what it is, because I don't know what the wastewater treatment plant would want. I mean, again, I think it's a function of the more volume that you have, the longer the term that you're willing to commit to, whether it's, and it doesn't have to be us, it's any of these vendors that come talk to you. The more volume you've got, the longer the term you're prepared to give, the participation that you're willing to do, whether that means provide property, whatever that scenario is going to drive your cost down, okay? If you say, I got 45,000 tons, I want you to come build the building, I want you to manage it, I want it gone, and it's a 5-year with a 5-year, you're probably going to be in the higher end of your cost structure, right? You come at 100,000 tons, then you may see a different number, a better number, I guess would be the best way of saying it.
Are you ciphering, Robert, or you still have another question?
Go ahead, I'll come back.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question real quick.
Real quick, Wayne's been very patient.
You said that you have a lot of third-party associations and partnerships. So we had somebody come in here and they had a proposal, and it was based on a lot of, deals with other, third-party companies. So what is your backup plan if one of these companies fail?
Well, I guess that depends upon what I agree to do. I would hope the partnership that I would have options outside of that, right? And for example, if MBI fails, we've got relationships other places. I'm not going to tell you it wouldn't be, we wouldn't be scrambling, right? But
the other part of that too is not to step on you, but say MBI fails. Sorry. Yeah. Well, the way I would look at that, when you start talking about MBI in particular, run the transfer station, if they woke up one morning and said, we're no longer doing this, we have the ability and we have the people that run equipment now. We can take in the garbage, we can load, we can drive tractor trailers. We just don't like doing it. It's just not something that we do typically as a business model. Doesn't mean we can't. If we have something, if we wake up tomorrow and somebody goes on strike in Chicago, we'll send a couple operators out of here and 3 or 4 truck drivers with a Class A CDL, and we'll go to work and make sure that happens. I mean, that's kind of what we do on a daily basis. So we would not be in a partnership with a third party that would leave us stranded in a contract that we couldn't get out of. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
Wayne, sorry for your delay.
Are we an aberration to your industry? And why I say that, we're a county of 330,000 residents, give or take it. We have a large municipality that has a solid waste program. And then we have 3 other municipalities that have subcontractors doing cup service and many residents pass back utilizing our convenience centers. So is there a mirror community, a mirror county community that you're doing what we need you to do already out there? Is there a block where you can say, well, we're doing that, we're doing that, we're doing that, we're doing that, and that's what we need to do around the county? Do you have that example of that?
I mean, I'm sure we do. I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking through, we're one of 17 market areas. I mean, we've got stuff out on the West Coast where we run everything, literally. Well, I understand that, right? I mean, I don't think you're an aberration. I mean, I think, I think you're in a very unique situation, given the fact of your disposal and the cost that's associated with it. That's different than just about any county that I've dealt with. Right? You're host to a large facility. It provides certain economic benefits. Not here to talk bad or good about anybody. I mean, it just is what it is. So from that perspective, you are unique, okay? But because at the end of the day, I mean, you're here as an elected official, right? And so you've got a level of responsibility, and it's a balance. And given the current situation, you're in a tough position, right? Trying to balance those constituencies. I don't think. I mean, Dwight, you've been in as many different places. I don't. That to me would be the most unique thing about Rutherford County is that, and it may be a blessing or a curse depending upon your perspective, right? But I mean, again, you've got to ultimately. I mean, I think you've got all the disciplines laid out. You just got to decide what it is you want to do, what service levels you want to provide, and then the more specific you can be, we can be.
Well, in a nutshell, listening to your proposal, does it come down to curbside service, a processing facility, which I assume you would want us to truly partnership in the construction of that, and then a transfer station, which you would want us to truly partner with that, and then the transportation piece. So basically, your presentation is 4 parts. That'd be pretty much in a nutshell.
It could be, or you could take different pieces out, but yes, essentially, probably combine the processing with the transfer. I would probably look at doing a longer term so we can get and understand the material that we're going to get out, right? Which again, I think is the benefit. We've got infrastructure in place. Now we may have to haul it further and spend a little money initially, but that's a whole lot different than popping up a $10, $20 million plant, right? So, I mean, that would be my perspective. I think you can combine a couple of those things together. or build it such that over time you can expand that facility. You know, the big piece is going to be changing the collection mechanism, right? And I mean, I don't know what the city of Murfreesboro is going to do. I'm not going to speak for them, right? But that's a piece. But, you know, to me, the biggest piece is there's a commercial and industrial piece out there and some things y'all control that we might be able to tweak, and then we see what kind of material we can get. Once the material's there and then we all understand it, then, you know, we move that direction.
Matt, we're underestimating Murfreesboro's contribution here, because I thought I understood the other day they were 100,000 tons rather than just being 45,000 tons like our convenience centers.
What they brought up in their proposal last week was 45-ish thousand tons of garbage, but there's almost 35 or 40,000 tons of sewer sludge. It's not part of our discussion. We don't have sewer sludge.
Bill?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So, I understand you can't, a lot of what ifs, man. It's hard to even pose a question. So, it's the first time I've asked this one. You three guys, if you were county commissioners, you're a taxpayer already, what the heck would you recommend?
Take a second.
Taxpayer, go ahead. I can spend Dwight's money a lot easier than...
It's a great question.
You're experts. Y'all are experts.
And again, I am a taxpayer and I am part of this community, and that's, one of the reasons I'm here. I've also, been in this industry for 25 plus years all over the Southeast. So for that standpoint, I would say, I'm somewhat expert level on understanding that. But I think what Rob was saying earlier were, that what I'm getting out of it as far as a county, and I've talked to Mayor McFarland about some different things. I've talked to people in the community. At the end of the day, we've got to figure out what it is we want to be. What it is we want to be in Middle Tennessee, being in Rutherford County, the city of Murfreesboro, and what that needs to look like. The good news is, we can do a lot of different things. But until I think we figure out as a community, as far as leaders of the community, really what we want to be, it's just very difficult for us to tell you. If there's a magic pill, we'd give it to you. But I think there's a lot of caveats that we could do. And you asked if if what we look like. It's very appealing for a company like ours to come into Rutherford County, the city of Murfreesboro, because there's so many opportunities that sit there depending on what it is you want to be in this community. There will be some changes that will have to be made education-wise. You will have to change the way people think, no different than I do, no different than what I do with my garbage at my house every day. With some of the businesses you'll find, they'll go quicker than the citizens, is what you typically find. Because they do have goals that they're trying to meet, from a corporate standpoint, a lot of them. With a household, they've got one goal. It's what's my cash flow look like at the end of the month. So that's kind of where the education part comes from. But it's a great question, and if I had a magic pill, I could give it to you. But I think that's the number one thing is you got to figure out what it is you want to be.
Yeah, and we, to some extent, I thought perhaps we could find a magic pill. I thought that somebody would come in, a waste manager would come in and suggest MRF, compost, waste to energy, landfill. We can build all four. What I'm hearing is there's no market for the commodities right now. There's not enough information to commit to a MRF. The waste to energy is not working. A lot of people are investing in it, but there's no product yet that's valuable. And composting, there's not enough organics. So y'all know that. You just told us that.
Yeah.
All we can do is collect and build up to, analyze the collection over time, volume, components, and then decide what's next, instead of us telling you what's next. Because what we thought we were telling you can't be done unless we build a gasification plant that has no product to sell. So I'm hearing you say we got to start collecting. and I'm sorry, I forget your names while I'm pointing at, that's
Okay,
rude.
that's all
Rob.
Dwight and Rob and
Dwight and
Dawn.
Rob,
Yeah,
I had Don. So,
I've been pointing out a lot in my life. It's fine.
forgive me for
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
rude.
Yeah.
So, so having said that, I'm putting you back on the spot.
Sure.
A MRF, waste energy is a pipe dream.
You know, waste energy, to say it's a pipe dream, I don't know. I'll just say there's just not a lot of technology, and I'll tell you, as a resident and someone that has done this for 25, 30 years, there's not really any technology that I can tell you that I've seen that's a good fit for Rutherford County or the city of Murfreesboro. It's not cost effective. It's not really that clean either. The regs change every year, and it's something you're going to have to continue to modify. They're very difficult in places like ours because you do have landfilling options. It makes it very unattractive from a cost perspective. Now, when you get into Florida where you have 0 places, they'll build a tall building, they'll burn it, make electricity, but you're going to pay $95 a ton. Right now, you're paying 0. So it's just, it's not very attractive.
I think what you're saying, when you're saying waste to energy, you're talking, and I'm not, don't mean to be degrading, but you're talking about a solution that's going to take care of all your problems, right?
No, just one of the components. One of the components. You have electricity. You're putting electricity in the grid in a few of your communities.
Correct.
In TVA.
Yes.
Yes.
So to some degree, you're diverting some of your waste stream to energy, methane or otherwise.
But when in our industry, when you say waste to energy, we think about big plants with burners.
Oh, gotcha.
They come in and dump it.
The
There's cranes,
gasification,
and then they burn.
some of the systems we saw,
Like in Huntsville.
Exactly. That's what I thought you were referring to.
What did you call it?
What we saw in Huntsville.
Yeah. That's so from an industry perspective, when you say waste to energy, that's what we think. There's some other evolving technologies, whether it's pyrolysis, and I'll get all my, I'm not scientific enough, but there are some, there are different carbon technologies that are out there. That's one of the things Fulcrum is trying to do. But again, to Dwight's point, burn plants are in existence. They're out there. You still got to have a landfill. You still got ash. You got air quality issues, which in this part of the country are only going to continue to become, I think, more. They're going to be a lot bigger issues in terms of how you run it. But I mean, again, I would, as a decision maker, I would look at, obviously you've got the components broken out. I would try to make the best decision that gives you flexibility over time, and look at, what, I mean, if you go invest in a $10, $20, $30 million project, what we see a lot is that project ends up, it's the tail that wags the dog, right? So once you jump in, you're in, right? You spend $30, $40 million of tax money, you are the pig at breakfast. So that drives and it should, right? But I would just encourage you to look at, as you make decisions, what gives me flexibility, what lets me adapt and change over time. If I go out and commit myself to and there's nothing wrong with Bedminster, okay, but if I go commit myself to that processing, composting thing, I'm in. That's what I'm doing, right? So that becomes the tail that wags the dog. So I would, as you look through each of these options, I would try to select the options that give me flexibility, that let me move in and out of decisions and choices. And yeah, you may, if you build a transfer station, or if you enter into a contract and it's a $5 or $10 million building, you may have to commit to buying that at some point in the future if you decide to go another way. But that's a little different over time than jumping into a $30 million project. So, I mean, again, I would try to give myself enough flexibility, and then see how the community is going to change from an educational perspective, and can you modify their behavior? What can you pull out of the waste stream? I mean, I don't think there's any magical things here. You look at Sevier County, there's just a lot of organics there. You got a lot of people traveling in and out, you got a lot of food, and given where they are, they have a lot of sewage sludge. And trust me, it's a difficult place to manage that material. So that kind of that was a big part of the decision-making process, right? Because they're in the mountains, it's a long way to go to land apply and get rid of them, so.
Rob, I was hesitant a while ago to ask this, and since commissioners down on the other end have asked it about these other companies, you know, we've heard one that I was interested in. It was a little hard to figure out hectare versus acre, and a euro versus a dollar. And one of the companies that we looked at is based in Belgium, and I know you said that you're familiar with a lot of the black box, and I'm not trying to call that or anything derogatory about anybody. I was actually impressed with these people. I just wish they spoke English a little better. But they were basically making an oil product, and you know, the thing that I'm seeing is they probably need oil, and the cost of oil, fuel oil in their area is different from here. You know, we've got better access unless they shut our pipeline off for a day or two. But something like that, is that viable? And I want to ask you a specific question about it, and I've got a couple more I want to ask about.
You know, my limited knowledge of waste technology and practices in Europe, it's a completely different world. Completely different market from a cost standpoint, and typically what you see is there's a waste to energy plant, there's a burn facility somewhere in their chain of how they're going to manage it, right? So like, I know, for example, you go to England, they kind of have a tax on the front end, right? So you're going to pay $100 when you come up to the gate. You're going to pay $100 a ton, and then you get to pay the operator whatever their rate is, and I may be off in my numbers. You know, everybody is searching for the magic energy bullet. I mean, we're no different. We've invested, and you know, up to this point, we have not found a technology that works. That's not to say it won't or it can't. You know, what I can tell you is these facilities cost. I mean, they're petroleum. They're refineries. They're massive in scope and size and in investment, and so that's kind of, you know, what we were talking about before is you just got to be careful. You know, I mean, again, I can promise y'all, and it's not just us, but you look at the top 3 or 4 companies in our industry, and if there was a silver bullet, you would see us. I mean, that's what we do. So, and that's not to be critical of the Belgian folks and whatever their process is. It's just, it's a very different environment when you go there and when you see it, and how everything's fractionalized, and you know, and it's a much more regulated environment. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but that's typically how they operate.
All right, now I want to talk about one that's a little closer to home, is the facility in Huntsville, the city of Huntsville, Alabama. And I'm familiar with it. I've toured it. You know, at the time I toured it, I was thinking about this date and time. That was back in 98, somewhere between 98 and 2000, the year. And I was thinking then about what are we going to do besides landfill. And they were, at the time, taking municipal waste and I don't know what else, but basically turning it, incinerating it, and turning it into steam. And the thing that impressed me about it is their building's entirely enclosed, just like you were talking about. It's right off the parkway downtown. Never knew it was there, and I lived outside of Huntsville for a short time. And no smell associated with it until you went inside the building. There was some, it wasn't horrible, but they had a little wispy steam. I don't know what their carbon footprint was, but they supplied the entire Redstone Arsenal with heating and cooling. And at that time, that plant cost $100 million. They told me they financed it over 20 years or maybe 30 years. And at that time, the finance guy I was talking to told me, well, they could have paid it off in 3 years. They, of course, had it spaced out with municipal bonds or county bonds. So what about Huntsville? I think now they may have converted and making electricity. I don't know that, but hadn't talked to them. Is cost prohibitive to go to that direction, or what's your thoughts on that? And the reason I'm asking, you guys are the experts. I want to hear it from the horse's mouth here.
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing, a caveat, we had a company, a subsidiary called Wheelabrator. It was 12 or 15 waste-to-energy plants, primarily concentrated on the East Coast and in Florida, and we sold that business. So I got to say that on the front end, right? So our investment has moved away from that technology. Dwight, I think, hit on it real. You're facing the long-term investment, and there is a lot of capacity up on the East Coast with these plants. Frankly, the ones that we own. The company that owns the facility you're talking about is called Covanta. There's a solid waste authority there. And look, there's some examples of things that have worked and continue to work across the country, and then there are other ones that haven't worked well, right? I mean, you look. Nashville had a thermal plant. That's probably the closest thing to us. They heated downtown. They heated the Capitol, the state capitol, and then buildings in between, right? So, what I will tell you about that process, and somebody brought up the TVA issue, right? So you're going to get whatever TVA wants to pay you. Now, that may be good or bad. It's whatever TVA decides, right? The other issue is you're going to have regulatory. You're going to have air standards that you've got to meet, and they are continuing to get difficult. You're still going to have a landfill because you're going to have ash, right? So a lot of the thing, and not only that, but Huntsville, they run an MSW landfill in addition to this because we dump there, right? So, and in fairness, Dwight's got customers that they've got a zero landfill policy, and we carry stuff down there. So So again, we don't invest in that business anymore. I'm not saying it's a bad business, but I think I've got to say that on the front end. And I think there's look, everything we touch has got regulatory and it gets tougher. It doesn't get easier, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just a fact of what we manage and deal with.
And for things like that, going back to Craig's question, for things like that to work, you will 100% have to put in ordinances to manage flow going in and out, because you can't build it and hope it shows up, because the building costs you what it costs if a truck shows up or not. So that's things like that. When you start talking about that, there will be ordinances that we'll have to put in place to mandate where volume goes at that point.
Steve?
Can you pull the slide back up where your two landfills are located?
Yes, sir.
Do either county that those are located in, do you pay, are they hosts to your landfills? Do you own that property? How do y'all function there?
We have agreements with both government entities, Marshall County and I believe we do in Benton as well. Yeah. We've got agreements. I mean, there's mechanisms in place within.
We own the land, right? We own.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
It's ours, but they get a host fee.
But there's mechanisms in place within the state law where you can go impact. Where if you don't make a deal, the county has the opportunity to come and levy fees. Now, how that is and what's fair and what's not fair, that's where the lawyers get involved. But it's there, so typically it's in our best interest to negotiate what we call host fee agreements. Okay, and you have one at Middle Point. So,
are y'all in full control of the landfill?
When you say we own it and we operate it, yes, sir.
So those counties have no influence on you in your operations?
When you say influence,
can they tell you what to do and what not to do?
No.
That's what I need.
Not outside of what we've agreed to in our different host fee agreements, right? And that may differ depending, we operate Iris Glen for the city of Johnson City under a long-term operating agreement. We're literally in downtown Johnson City. I can see City Hall from the top of the landfill. That contract's very specific in terms of the things we can and can't do, but we agreed to them, and so we have to live by them.
Can you tell me how many counties contribute trash into either one of those landfills?
I mean, 10, 15.
So it would really be ridiculous to think one or two counties could support a landfill. Is that right?
It would have to be a very large county to support one, yes.
Okay. I just got one other comment. Y'all are next to our last RFP, and we're not getting the answers we come here to get, but I don't think it's your fault, and I really don't think it's our fault. I think we're asking questions that would probably should be asked when it's narrowed down to maybe the final four or whatever, because we don't have the numbers to throw at you. I could ask you, what does that weigh? You couldn't tell me because you don't have a hand on it. Then I don't really think it's fair, but still we're discouraged by not being able to get the answers to help us make a decision at this point. Or I am. I can't speak for everybody else in here, but I can tell the questions, we're not getting the information that we thought we might get. It's not your fault. I don't think it is. I really don't. That's all I've got to say about it.
All right.
Wayne was headed down the right direction. He didn't know the right answer, the right way to ask the question. Has this company done anything similar to what's happening in Rutherford, or what we're expecting in Rutherford County was where you were going with it? They're not currently doing it the way they were 20 years ago. 20 years ago, Cedar Ridge Landfill hauled the convenience centers for Marshall County. City of Lewisburg picked up their own trash. There were private collection contracts with this company with two cities in the county. So to answer your question, yes, they have done it. It's just been a long time ago. It's probably back when Dawn was still in high school.
Santo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I listened to the presentation. You mentioned a lot of the community outreach and school business and so on and so forth. And in pricing, you mentioned to Commissioner Harris that's good. So a lot of information. I think I would like to ask a short question. The first one, I read you have about 45,000 employees here in North America, and also the large landfill in Canada and the U.S. And how many facilities that you have?
Got over 260 landfills. I can go back and pull the exact information. We've got over 200 landfills. I'd say we've got at least that many transfer stations. We operate in every state but Nevada, I think, outside of Fulcrum. Big Sky. We're not in Montana. So, again, and we're bigger in some places than others. Our industry has formed through acquiring entrepreneurs, and you can go back to when I was in high school. But that's typically how all these companies have been formed. So we've got more landfills and more transfer stations than any other company. I'm not going to say we've got more hauling locations, but I think it would be fairly
I would, if I had to put money, I would bet on it.
Yeah. We can get you that. I'll have to pull it from the annual report.
And I think we're also the largest recycler in North America.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Wayne.
Looking at your pricing sheet, you talked about potentially combining the processing facility and the transfer station into one large facility. Looking at this pricing structure, how would that change? Would it stay the same, or would it
Just be a function of what we tried to accomplish.
So would the numbers per ton broken out between the two facilities would equate into the same numbers?
There would probably be some economies, but we would just have to determine what type of processing facility did we want to build and invest in, okay? If that makes sense. There might be some building savings by being able to combine them. We would just, I'd have to sit down, we'd have to lay a plan out, look at what the level of investment is, because a lot of the processing costs that you see laid out, that's pretty much our standard. There's a processing fee, there's an offset for contamination, and a shared value. And that's something we've done as a company to try to move and make recyclable sustainable, right? And so there's going to be a processing fee. If we build a MRF, or if you come to our MRF, there's going to be a processing fee. In terms of if we develop something, we would just have to look and understand how, I would assume under that scenario that we would probably build a transfer station first and have the option and the opportunity over time to add on. I would not think we would want to build the processing facility coming out of the block, because we just don't know what kind of material we're going to gain or gather. So I think we'd gain some on the facility cost, but I think some of those hard day-to-day operating costs aren't going to change, right? No, we would save money moving the material, right? You wouldn't have to run the 30-something miles.
So I'm going to piggyback on that, Wayne. If we had if we had a transfer station here, we were already in partnership. Transfer station exists. Theoretically, we could send all of our trash there for $60 a ton. Well, I'm using your number. Is that could 45,000 tons go to a transfer station?
Yes.
And we could multiply that times your high end here to get some perspective on it. $2.7 million, and it would go away. We drop it at the transfer, and for $60, it's transferred.
You're done. Yes, sir.
It leaves that station. If there were a MRF there, some of it might spin off to the MRF.
Correct.
And potentially pay another $98 to process it.
Yes, sir. Now, again, we
I know this is theoretical, or you're trying to put a good swag number on this, so I'm not trying to hold you to it. But
yeah, well, I understand that we're struggling as much as you all are, because without real specifics, typically when we get a bid, it's boom, 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 right? There's 10 things. This is what you're going to do. This is how many tons you are. This is how long you're going to have it. This is what our responsibilities are. This is what your responsibilities are, right? So I guess our attempt in what y'all are looking at is to give you a range and an understanding, right? Again, under each scenario, and I don't think it's just germane to us, Waste Management. I think any of your contractors are going to go through the similar thought process.
You're correct.
Right?
You're correct.
So the more volume you have, the longer you're prepared to commit, the more you're prepared to participate, and participate is a big, broad spectrum, right? Those are the things that are going to drive down your price and give you the best value, okay? Now, there may be political constraints, right? We can talk about residential collection. Y'all got some great people out there working. I'm not suggesting, right? So you've got to balance part of that, and we understand that when you look at it. You know, those are some tough decisions. But again, quantity, time, participation. That's what's going to drive in any of those scenarios.
So if we had a way to control, currently we do not, we only control the trash that we pick up, what comes in our convenience centers and what we pick up at the school systems for the city and the county. City of Murfreesboro controls the residential stuff that they pick up. The rest of the trash generated within the county, we have zero control of. But if we had a mechanism to where we controlled the residential waste for the entire county and directing it where it went to live, would that make the contract a lot easier for y'all to deal with?
Well, I think it would provide you with more tons, right? Which goes back to that scenario. Now, you know, that what you're describing is not without its difficulties and challenges, right? So that's a decision y'all have to make.
And would it be feasible for a residential one-armed bandit weekly route to be 6,000 homes?
Say the question again?
One residential automated side loader route
6,000.
running a week,
5 days.
picking up 6,000 homes.
So basically 1,200 tons a day, 1,200 homes a day, I'm sorry. Is it feasible? It is in the right application. You know, it's, if you're running out in the county and you've got, you know, in the rural parts of town where houses are very spread out, large lots, farms still out there, no, you can't pick up 12, you can do pretty quick math. It's hard to drive by 1,200 homes in your car, much less stopping at every house. But if you're in the city of Murfreesboro where there are very dense areas, yes. If you're in Smyrna, very dense areas, yes. Places in Laverne, very dense, yes. But once you get out into the rural, to say you can pick up 1,200 homes in an ASL, it's just not feasible. It's just not enough time in a day.
But if you included some of the very large residential subdivisions out in the county.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. If you've got the density, yeah, it can do it. You know, and again, the safety aspect, the people part of it, the arm works the same speed at 4 o'clock as it did at 8. You know, it doesn't get tired. It runs exactly the same. But yeah, if you've got the application, you've got the density, it will definitely get it done.
Well, and also, I mean, from your life and experience, which I happen to know, it's all about approach time, right? When we're out in the county, if it's 5 minutes between stops, it's a little different than 15 seconds in downtown Murfreesboro, right? It's just math. Now, you know, we can densify that, but I mean, you know, we're certainly not going to make that assumption.
Where I was also going with that is you've got already established businesses within the county doing similar work. So if you divided it up in a manner such as that and put it out for bid, now everybody's got an opportunity to get a piece of it.
All right, I got a few questions. Construction and demolition waste, it looks like you currently haul that up to Southern Services, the C&D landfill, is that what that means? Okay, do you guys bury that? Do you grind it up? Do you pull shingles out and send that to folks who want to use the shingles for blast furnaces or things like that? Or what happens to your C&D waste?
I mean, right now we're burying it because the offset of the value we can extract isn't there, right? If there was a permissive spec for shingles to go into asphalt, then, and I mean, LoJack's got 3 or 4 things. It's just not there, right? So there's no demand. So there's an opportunity there, right, from a governmental side, talking about the regulations, right? I mean, if you put a spec into asphalt, you're going to see shingles get recycled, right? So,
Ideally, if we were to cite a piece of property for a recycle center or the MRF, or what kind of acres would we want to be on the lookout for? dozen acres, 25 acres, 30 acres?
I would think 25 to 30. But then I think you've got to balance what Craig was talking about is where do you put it and who gets impacted and what type of what type of industrial land's out there. Y'all would know that better than we would. That would be
right. Okay. You didn't mention, or we haven't chatted about anything about operating convenience centers. You guys have no interest in operating our convenience centers. Is that correct?
Not currently, no.
Okay. All right. I have a curiosity question. I pay a subcontractor so much a month to come pick up my recyclables, and I understand they go to a waste management facility. Where is that? Where would those go? I live in Murfreesboro. It's in the city.
Go to River Hills.
Good River Hills.
River Hills, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's up near.
Okay.
It's in pre-Donaldson, off Lebanon Road.
Gotcha. All right.
Kind of transition area, yeah.
Okay. And then, so then what happens to that blue bag once it hits that recycling center? It's split open and sorted out?
No, we don't take the bags because of the conveyors and things like that.
Okay.
So what happens with your recycling here in town, they take it to a facility here, bust open the bag, and then take it, and then.
Okay, so aluminum sorted out, metal, tin.
Once it gets to our facilities, it goes across the belt, and it goes through a conveyor system. We've got some pickers on there, but it'll pull the cardboard out, the aluminum out, the plastics out.
Okay.
And it'll be sorted out and baled by commodity.
All right, very good. Okay, a couple more questions. It sounds like, much to my chagrin, and I'm going to blend these two questions together. We talked about, and some of us have seen some of the big facilities, highly robotic in West Coast. And we do know that the regulations are very tight in the West Coast, and so there's legislation in place that requires that, which we don't have here. Don't have it. May not have it for a while, because a lot of it's on the state level, pushed down to cities and counties. But we saw a lot of that robotic, the arms were pulling out glass, pulling out specific, it didn't take them long for those robots to train what to look for. But I kind of got the feeling that you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm making an assumption, that that may not be the right deal, or that technology, that may be a one-off kind of a thing.
I think...
Or that's out of our reach. That's out of Rutherford County's reach.
Well, I mean, again, I think if that load's fractionalized at the point where it's a single stream, for example, right? Then we're developing, we've got our first major plant in Chicago where we've got significant investments in robotics. But again, understand, it's not a rear loader that's come through and picked up everything,
right,
and then dumped it on the ground. To answer your question, there are plants out there that do it. It's just, we don't think it's the right path to go. Yeah. But to answer your question in terms of robotics and for material that starts out as recycling, yes, it does work. And we're starting to see it. I can't, again, the technology is pretty amazing in terms of what's happening and what we see. But in terms of just taking 100% MSW and then extracting value out of it, no. Okay. We don't, at this point, we don't see that. I'm not saying it won't happen, but today, I can't tell you that would work. But in terms of a MRF, right, and the things Dwight kind of talked about, yeah, there's some technology out there, and it's growing.
Okay, so let me slide in then to the part B of this question. Everybody in this committee has done a lot of homework and research over the last couple of years as we've delved and immersed ourselves in the solid waste issues. And, I read a lot about what's happening in Europe and China and how they do things, and it's very different. It's interesting, and it looks like it has some potential, but you're right, it's the opposite side of the world, and regulations are different, air quality is different, land mass, density, everything is different. So, I'm not naive enough to say, why can't you just pick that up and move it over to the U.S. and expect it to work? But what I heard you say earlier on in your conversation was, you used the word, there's no black box yet. There's no pill. Where technology's not quite there yet, perhaps. So, Phil asked the question, you live here, what do we do? Are we in a position in the year 2021 that is the technology going to be there? I know this is a tough question. Is the technology going to be there for I forget the waste to the jet fuel. What does it start with? Starts with an L, doesn't it? Fulcrum F, yeah. I mean, is that 5 years down the road? It's
a great question, and knowing how much money we've spent, we're trying.
We're hoping it's next year, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just a level of. I used to have a copy of the portfolio of companies, right? So we essentially became investors, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it was pretty amazing. Frankly, probably half those companies or more don't even exist anymore, right? Because the technologies just hadn't played out. Fulcrum's the big player right now, and obviously we're invested in it, so we've got a vested interest, for lack of a better term. I don't know. That is a great question. Hence, my response to you all is, I wouldn't marry myself to a specific process at this point in time, because I don't know anything that I could sit there and say, yes, I'm just unaware of something that would make sense. But what I can tell you, and what we see everywhere we go, is when someone buys into a process like that, you are the pig at breakfast. Yeah. You're going to, right? So, and in so many cases, there's multiple investment, there's successes and failures, right? So I would try to build a system that gives me the most flexibility and protection and allows me over time to make the best decisions. But understand, everything you're looking at is going to cost more money than what you're doing today, right? I think y'all probably figured that out by now.
Yeah.
And so that's a tough political thing for y'all. Right. I get it.
So in a crystal ball world, to start slow with looking at our recyclables, doing the education, perhaps getting some mandates by state or city, county, you mentioned, and I totally agree, commercial and industrial customers will learn faster because they have a real stake in the game. Households will take a little longer to persuade. Is that a 3-year training process, a 5-year training process? How long do you think, and I know this is a tough question to ask or answer, but do we anticipate that this is going to be a 5-year from point A to B before we can even think about putting together a transfer station or a MRF, or we come back to you guys and say, well, we did part A, we're ready to go to part B, or we figured out what all we can capture. We got so many tons, and it's marketable. When can we go to that next step? Because you guys know what we're up against, right? We got our neighbors saying, man, we got 6 years, but we want to add a whole bunch more acres, and you gotta either be with us or against us. So we're in a tough spot, right? So we either can say, look, we don't need you anymore, and we're going to pay the $60 a ton, and we're going to send it to your transfer station, and we're going to say we're done with you, right? We could do that. they may say, well, we're done with you tomorrow, and we're going to stop picking up trash. So we need to be ready to pay $60 a ton to do that. But we feel like we're getting boxed in with not a lot of options. So that's why I'm asking, how long is it going to take, you think, based on your expertise and your North America boundaries, to educate people and be ready for us to do the next step?
Well, I think it's at minimum a couple of years. It comes down to how much money are you willing to invest and pour into it. Yeah. To say how long is this going to take, it's going to take forever. I mean, you're going to continue to evolve, right? And that sounds, it sounds kind of hokey, but that's just the reality, right, of where you are. I mean, very simply, I would take with the material that you control and you have say over, and if that's the schools and the convenience centers, I would start at the schools, and I would try to start and build a program. It's interesting, I know, but we all have, we have this corporate-based training, right? So we get these emails, and I know you're getting it. We've got this recycling program, 3 modules that we have to take, right? And I think you're done because I haven't gotten your email. But long story short, I took it. And it was fascinating to me because I sat there and I go back to Mobius, right? You remember Mobius all those years ago. But one of the first things that I saw, that one of the first rules was you always pair a trash can and a recycle can together, which makes all the sense in the world when you think about it. But it's very simple, right? Because they said, just doing that in and of itself, again, it's dumbing it down and making it as simple as it can. But, we're going through that. We're learning, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, our customers are telling us this is what we want. So we got to figure out, that's part of why we're in business, right? Mm-hmm. We got to figure out how to balance those constituencies. But that was one of the first things in the slides that blew me away, was that was one of the simple rules. The other thing, nothing gets used, no bags. Bags kill us. Mm-hmm. Absolutely kill us in MRFs. I mean, we shut down 2 or 3 times a day. They have, what is it called? It's negative sort, but there's these star screens, right? So everything's negative, right, where they try to use gravity to drop materials out. Well, the bags wrap up. Yeah. Walmart bags are the worst. But you'd be amazed at how many customers, single stream customers we have that are so proud of. But so I mean, again, 2 years to get started, and then I think you see what materials are out there. I would go straight to the schools. I would try to drive that process. Now the question becomes, can you what have we got to do to recruit a champion in every school? How do we do that, right? And then we start trying things and seeing. Mm-hmm. The more money you're willing to invest, and the more people and time, then the quicker the success and the greater the material. One of the problems we have, especially in situations where we've got people that are really engaged, they're so engaged that if they even think it can be recycled, it's coming in, right? So, and that in effect hurts your program more. So there's a balance to it. We've tried to simplify it, but it's constant. We know if we stop, contamination comes right. I mean, you can just set a clock to it. It's just human behavior. So, I mean, again, I don't know if that's, it's going to take time. The other question is, I would say, after 2 or 3 years, if you've invested X amount of money and time and effort and you're not getting the results, then it comes time to make a decision. The less money you've got invested, the better. Yeah. The better off you are.
Well, I think the very first thing you said, if to figure out what we're going to do, is we got to analyze what we have. Enable to direct you, right? We have to analyze what we have. So if we were to sit down with you all again in the near future and say, all right, we agree with you, we got to analyze. So would we partner on the education process could we partner on the education process, which would then also be part of your analyzation on what are we getting, and is it worth going to that next step? I mean, could that be the simple baby steps?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got people we can bring in. I'm thinking of the in-plant services folks.
Babies and some of that group. And,
yeah. I mean,
programs that can go through schools, communities. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, the other thing we can do is look at what what y'all are picking up, and we've got a pretty good idea based upon where we are. This is what we see, and this is what we're going to get. Here's a range of tolerance. I just don't know if you're going to have enough material to drive that MRF cost down.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, and then, that's a lot of our concerns, because we know what Monster has grown in our part of the county, and a lot of us are saying, we're tired of taking other counties' trash. But on the business side, we also know that, well, you got to feed the monkey. Well, if you're going to build something, you got to feed the monkey, and that means we may not have enough tonnage between the city, the county, schools, and then you add commercial and industrial, you may get there for some small system, but is that enough even? So we may have to take a few counties' trash in. And so it's like deja vu all over again. So we have so many emotions, and I know we got to make good business decisions, so we got to take some emotions out of this, but it's a tough deal.
No doubt, and we understand.
Yeah. Wayne?
I look at this as option A. Kind of piggybacking on Commissioner Piercy's comment, and I assume we're going to bring a number of these entities back for a re-interview. I think I would like to see that you bring back, I don't know if you want to do A, B, C, or D, but bring back that you said we need to walk before we run, that knowing that the convenience centers gives us about 45,000 tons, knowing that the city of Murfreesboro gives us probably 50,000 tons, and that Smyrna and Laverne, which together are about 100,000 citizens, and with the state's 1,000 a ton per person annually, maybe tell us what it would look like keeping the convenience centers, utilizing Murfreesboro, Smyrna, Laverne, and a transfer station. And then as we grow, like you said, adding a processing center to it.
I mean, we'll be glad to come back and talk to you. I mean, you just need to look at a sliding scale of tons and what you're prepared to provide, and then you'll get an idea.
Well, I think you're going to have to, since I think we all feel like we're solid waste professionals after all this time, but I think we're also dependent on you of, pardon this expression, Mr. Chairman, of getting outside the box and saying, hey, y'all can do this. This may save you some dollars. We're kind of dependent on your expertise too, that you've seen some things that have worked in other communities that might serve us well.
Sure. We'll be glad to look.
And I mean, that may not be the burden I should be putting on you, but since you put your toe into our pond, I'm putting that burden on you and asking you to help us figure out this burden.
We'll be glad to help. I put my toe in twice.
Questions? Back?
Try to affect change. City of Murfreesboro implemented a $5 per cart per month charge. Now it's at $7.50 per month. A lot of the Murfreesboro residents don't know the difference between the city and the county, so we receive a lot of their phone calls, and I love it. I get their department in trouble all the time, but it amazes me at how many people are calling to purchase a second cart. They want 2 carts. They're not ready to recycle yet. And I've said this before, and I'll repeat it. Under Mayor Burgess, I was trying to get the schools to recycle, and he told me, he said, you cannot make those schools recycle. I said, no, sir, you're right, but I can cause them to have to. So what we did was a calculation on how many students does it take to generate a cubic yards of trash a week. The number was from 2 to 50. So now our number is 35. So 35 students generate 1 cubic yard of trash per week. That's the level of service each school gets. And that causes them to have to recycle. You were looking at some numbers earlier. The single stream program that we were doing, it was at the school, was going to that River Hills facility, and it was costing us a processing fee to take care of it if it was not contaminated. If it was contaminated, there was a fee on top of that. Now that processing fee is not the price that they have in here. It's quite a bit less than that. But if you remember, we switched from a single stream program to a dual stream program of paper and cardboard only. We can take that to a facility and actually get paid for it. So what he's trying to help you understand is you got to figure out what level of comfort and how much you're willing to spend. Solid Waste Department was not willing to spend the $55 a ton to get rid of single stream. Just not worth it. Plus the trucking haul to get it there. So, that's where Rob is trying to help us get to and help you understand is you've got to be able to say, all right, I'm willing to pay $10 and I want this for my $10. Then let them tell you what you can do.
Well said, Mike. Anybody else before I close this up? All right. Gentlemen and Dawn, you've been a spectacular speaker tonight, by the way. I want to say that. I want to say thank you all for A, your presentation and your time and effort, but B, for talking to us in just common sense, plain American, in terms of we can understand. I appreciate that. I felt that you were talking to us from the heart, no sugarcoating. Commissioner Piercy alluded to, and I understand his pain, that we would like to have real black and white. If we do this, we get that. If we, but this life is just not that way right now, because we don't have enough information. As soon as the cities and us can sit down and we all agree that who's on the team and how many tons we're going to generate and what we all want to do and how much we can afford, then that gives you better tools to understand, okay, like Max said, we're willing to do this, and for that we can get you this and this and this. But we're not there yet.
And I'll say this, and Rob and I talked, today, this morning on his drive in, and I told him, because this has helped me, just to be honest, because, we see this proposal come out, and it is unique. There's not really a start date, doesn't really tell us what you have or what you want to do, and it just says go. So we were somewhat struggling to figure out what to come in here and say and do. But what we did want to do is come in here and tell you that we are genuine, that we are real, and that we'd want to be a partner with Rutherford County. It is unique. You do have something special that we would love to be a part of. I just know for me, just listening to your questions has somewhat helped me understand kind of where you're wanting to go, what you're wanting to see. Because before, to be honest, we really had no idea what you were going to ask him. It was just such a, it's a very broad question, and I get why you did it. It's nobody's fault. It's everybody's trying to figure out a better way. So I think it definitely helps me understand what you're looking for on that, crawl, walk, run type method, somewhere, year 1, 3, 5, 7, what that looks like and where we feel like we can get. So to answer your question, I do think we should be able to come back and give you a little more of kind of what we feel like that looks like with a little more information back. Probably be some conversations one-on-one outside of this room just to get some more answers for us on what you're looking for. But, again, that's, we appreciate the time
Yeah.
and for you guys letting us come and speak and getting a better understanding for what you guys are really trying to do.
Well, I'm going to say this as Mike Cush, a member of this committee and a resident of the community. I'm not going to say this as chairman. I'm not going to say this because I'm speaking for this group. I'm going to say this as a two-year or two-cycle commissioner and a guy that's heavily involved in this. I am with the majority of the citizens, I believe, that we don't want to see the mountain grow any farther. We also don't want to feel that we're getting bullied or bulldogged any longer. We are tired of the odors that have gone for many years with no real plan or let's say, source of the problem. They're throwing money at it, but nothing's really getting fixed. To me, they have a poor business plan. And to let them continue to grow with the problems that they have shown us does just not make, A, good common sense to an old country boy, or B, good business sense. We want to be in control of our own destiny. Those citizens in that part of the county, to me, have had enough. And we're looking, we don't want to be cavemen anymore and bury our trash. We understand that the small part of that trash has to be buried at some point because there's always residue of whatever we do that has to be landfilled. But, we would like to think we're a progressive county and we can do better. And we're a big fan of free, don't get me wrong. And our customers, our clients, our constituents have gotten free for a long time. But at some point in time, you got to look over there at that part of the county and give it a whiff and say, when is enough enough? So that's what we're elected to do, and decide when is enough and how much we're going to be able to pay to slow it down or stop it. So that's why we need partners like you guys to help us and direct us. So we're hoping to turn the page, so to speak, and it's been a long time coming, but we appreciate your help. And again, we appreciate the fact that you could explain this in a very easy to understand and process sense. So thank you all. We will hopefully be hearing from us in a matter of weeks, if not short months, and get you back on for round 2. All right?
We'd love to come back and help.
Very good. Thank you all.
And again, we're here in between now and then. If you've got questions, y'all can.
Fantastic.
I'm here.
Well, I'm here every day. I can be here within half a day.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Gentlemen. Yeah. Gentlemen, you have a score sheet. If you have it done now, that would be great. If not, have it tomorrow night when we reconvene. And again, if you'll remember at the beginning of the presentation, we have some folks that still have a homework assignment. If you remember, bring those tomorrow night as well. Any questions, any discussion? We'll see you tomorrow at 5:30 for Pratt Recycling. That should also be very entertaining. And then we're good to go. Thank you all.